You're keeping a secret scorecard, and it's destroying your relationship. Right now, as you read this, there's an invisible tally running in your mind. Points for when they remembered to text you back quickly. Points deducted when they forgot that thing you mentioned last week. Points for choosing the restaurant you wanted. Points lost when they didn't notice your new haircut. You don't want to be doing this mental math, but you can't stop. Every interaction gets measured, weighed, and added to a running total that determines whether you feel loved or disappointed on any given day. And here's the terrifying truth. They're keeping score too. This isn't just about romantic relationships. You're doing this with your parents, your children, your friends, your coworkers. Every human being you care about is unknowingly failing tests they never knew they were taking. You've created an elaborate system of unspoken rules, invisible standards, and secret expectations that no one else has access to. Then you feel hurt, angry, or disconnected when they inevitably fail to meet criteria they never agreed to. You wake up next to them every morning, but lately it feels like there's a wall between you that you can't explain. You say, "I love you." You go through the motions, coffee, work, dinner, maybe a conversation about your day, but underneath the surface, you're quietly keeping score. Did they text you first today? Did they remember you had that big meeting? Did they ask how you were feeling? Did they notice the effort you made? The hints you dropped? Every little thing they do or don't do gets measured against an invisible standard you've created in your mind. I see you there, carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken expectations. I see you building walls between yourself and the people you love, brick by brick, each brick made from another moment when reality didn't match the script you'd written. I see you trapped in the exhausting cycle of hoping, expecting, and then feeling let down when the world doesn't conform to your inner blueprint. And I'm here to tell you something that might transform not just your relationship, but your entire understanding of what love really means. Your expectations aren't protecting your love. They're suffocating it. This is the most universal relationship killer that exists, and almost no one talks about it. We've all been conditioned to believe that expectations are normal, even healthy. You should have standards, people say. You deserve better, they tell you. But there's a crucial difference between having standards and having expectations. Standards are about how you allow yourself to be treated. Expectations are about how you demand others behave. In Your Erroneous Zones, I wrote about the self-defeating beliefs that create our own suffering. Today, I want to share with you one of the most relationship-destroying erroneous zones I've encountered. The belief that love means having your expectations met. The belief that if someone truly loves you, they should somehow know what you need without you having to ask. The belief that love looks a certain way, sounds a certain way, acts a certain way. You've been carrying around a detailed blueprint in your mind, haven't you? A precise architectural plan of how love should look, how your partner should behave, how your relationships should unfold. This blueprint was constructed from movies you've watched, books you've read, relationships you've observed, and dreams you've harbored since childhood. But here's what you haven't realized. That blueprint isn't a guide to happiness. It's a prison that keeps you from experiencing the love that's actually available to you. Every expectation you hold is essentially a demand you're making on reality. When you expect your partner to behave a certain way, you're saying the universe must conform to my vision or I will suffer. But the universe doesn't operate according to your personal preferences. Your partner is a separate human being with their own thoughts, feelings, patterns, and ways of expressing love. When you expect them to be different than they are, you're not loving them. You're loving your idea of who they should be. Think about this for a moment. When you expect your partner to read your mind, you're asking them to possess supernatural abilities they don't have. When you expect them to always know what you need, You're asking them to be responsible for your emotional well-being in ways that are impossible and unfair. When you expect them to love you exactly the way you love them, you're asking them to be you instead of themselves. As I wrote in Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, based on the ancient wisdom of the Tao, resistance to what is creates suffering. Every expectation is a form of resistance. You're resisting your partner's natural way of being, their authentic expression of love, their human imperfections, and that resistance is creating a constant state of tension in your relationship. You've felt it, haven't you? That chronic low-level disappointment that follows you through your days. The way your body tenses when they don't respond the way you hoped, the way your mind immediately jumps to what they did wrong instead of what they did right. The way you feel constantly on edge, waiting for the next moment when reality will fail to match your expectations. But here's what's really happening in your nervous system when you live with constant expectations. Your brain doesn't distinguish between a real threat and an unmet expectation. When your partner fails to meet your mental blueprint, your body responds as if you're in danger. Stress hormones flood your system. Your fight or flight response activates. You're literally living in a state of chronic stress, not because anything is actually wrong, but because reality refuses to conform to your internal demands. This is where the psychological dangers become truly serious. The first and most insidious danger is the development of chronic resentment. This isn't the explosive anger that clears the air. It's the slow-burning poison that accumulates drop by drop every time your partner fails to meet an unspoken expectation. You start keeping score, not consciously but subconsciously. You begin to build a case against them, collecting evidence of their failures to be the person you've decided they should be. You've noticed it, haven't you? The way small disappointments start to pile up like autumn leaves. The way you find yourself thinking, they never, or they always. The way you start to view their actions through the lens of your accumulated grievances. This resentment doesn't just poison your relationship, it poisons your own heart. You become someone you don't recognize. Someone who's constantly critical, constantly disappointed, constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. Another serious warning sign is when you find yourself living in a perpetual state of disappointment. This becomes your default emotional state in the relationship. You're always slightly let down because reality never quite matches your mental blueprint. You lose the ability to appreciate what is because you're so focused on what isn't. You become like someone standing in a beautiful garden, complaining that the roses aren't lilies. The most dangerous aspect of expectations is how they turn love into a form of control. At their core, expectations are attempts to manipulate another person's behavior to match your comfort zone. You're essentially saying, I will only be happy if you conform to my vision of who you should be. This creates a dynamic where your partner feels constantly judged, constantly inadequate, constantly trying to meet an invisible standard they can never fully understand. I want you to understand something crucial. Your partner can feel the weight of your expectations, even when you don't voice them. They can sense your disappointment, your silent criticism, your constant evaluation of their performance. This creates a relationship dynamic where they're walking on eggshells, trying to be someone they're not, losing touch with their authentic self in an attempt to meet demands they never agreed to. When you live with chronic expectations, you also develop what I call appreciation blindness. You become so focused on what your partner isn't doing that you can't see what they are doing. You miss the small gestures of love, the quiet acts of care, the unique ways they express affection. You're so busy looking for the love you expected that you can't receive the love they're actually offering. The long-term emotional cost of this pattern is devastating. You develop a cynical view of love, convinced that all relationships are ultimately disappointing. You lose the ability to be present with your partner because you're always comparing their behavior to your mental checklist. You create a self-fulfilling prophecy where your expectation of disappointment leads you to interpret neutral actions negatively, confirming your bias that they don't really care. But here's the profound truth that can transform everything. Your expectations aren't really about your partner. They're about your own unhealed wounds, your own insecurities, your own attempts to control life to feel safe. When you expect your partner to always be available, you're trying to heal your fear of abandonment. When you expect them to read your mind, you're avoiding the vulnerability of asking for what you need. When you expect them to make you feel loved in specific ways, you're trying to fill a void that only you can fill. The transformation begins when you take radical responsibility for your own emotional well-being. Instead of expecting your partner to anticipate your needs, you learn to communicate them clearly. Instead of expecting them to make you happy, you discover how to create happiness from within. Instead of expecting them to complete you, you work on becoming whole within yourself. This shift requires you to examine your expectations with brutal honesty. What are the unwritten rules you've created for your partner? What are the silent demands you're making? Write them down. Look at them. Ask yourself, did I ever actually communicate this need? Is this fair? Is this even possible for another human being to fulfill? In Excuses Begun, I wrote about how we use our circumstances as excuses to avoid taking responsibility for our own happiness. Your expectations have become your excuse, an excuse not to communicate clearly, not to take care of your own emotional needs, not to love your partner as they actually are, rather than as you think they should be. The path to freedom begins with what I call radical acceptance. This doesn't mean accepting behavior that's disrespectful or harmful. Those are boundary issues, not expectation issues. Radical acceptance means releasing the need for your partner to be different than they are, for you to be happy. It means loving them as they are, not as you think they should be. This requires you to grieve the fantasy. You have to let go of the perfect partner who lives in your mind, the one who always knows what you need, who never disappoints you, who loves you exactly the way you want to be loved. That person doesn't exist. But the person who does exist, the real, imperfect, beautifully human person sharing your life, they're capable of offering you a love that's deeper and more authentic than any fantasy. When you begin to let go of expectations, you start to see your partner with fresh eyes. You notice the ways they do show love, even if it's not how you expected. You appreciate their efforts, even if they're imperfect. You recognize their growth, even if it's not happening on your timeline. You begin to receive the love they're actually offering, instead of rejecting it because it doesn't match your blueprint. This transformation also changes how you communicate. Instead of making demands disguised as requests, you learn to share your needs without attachment to the outcome. Instead of saying, "You should know I need more affection," you say, "I would love more physical touch. Would you be willing to hold my hand while we watch TV?" You give them the freedom to respond authentically rather than forcing them to comply with your expectation. You also learn to appreciate your partner's unique love language instead of demanding they speak yours. Maybe they don't say "I love you" as often as you'd like, but they show love by taking care of practical things. Maybe they're not naturally romantic, but they show love through acts of service. Maybe they don't express emotions the way you do, but they show love through their consistent presence and reliability. As I wrote in The Shift, there comes a moment when you move from demanding that life meet your expectations to appreciating life as it is. This shift transforms your relationship from a constant negotiation to a celebration of two unique beings choosing to share their lives together. The most beautiful aspect of releasing expectations is that it creates space for your relationship to breathe. When your partner no longer feels the pressure to perform according to your script, they can relax into their authentic self. They can love you freely rather than defensively. They can show up as they are rather than as they think you want them to be. You'll also discover that when you stop trying to control your partner, they often become more of the person you hoped they would be. Not because they're trying to meet your expectations, but because they feel free to grow. When someone feels truly accepted for who they are, they naturally want to be their best self. Right now, I want you to try something. Think about one expectation you've been holding about your partner. Maybe it's that they should be more romantic. Maybe it's that they should communicate more. Maybe it's that they should show affection differently. Now, imagine releasing that expectation completely. Imagine accepting your partner exactly as they are in that area. How does that feel? Scary? Liberating? That feeling of liberation is what's waiting for you on the other side of your expectations. That's the freedom that comes from loving someone as they are instead of as you think they should be. That's the peace that comes from accepting reality instead of fighting against it. Your relationship doesn't need to meet your expectations to be beautiful. It needs to be authentic, real, based on who you both actually are, rather than who you think you should be. When you stop expecting your partner to be perfect, you can start appreciating their humanity when you stop demanding they love you in specific ways. You can start receiving the love they're actually offering. The person lying next to you tonight is not your enemy. They're not failing you by being themselves. They're not disappointing you by having their own way of loving. They're simply human, just like you. And when you can love their humanity instead of expecting their perfection, you'll discover what real love actually feels like. Let go of the blueprint. Release the checklist. Drop the scorecard. Your relationship doesn't need to look like anyone else's. It doesn't need to match your fantasy. It just needs to be real, authentic, and based on acceptance rather than expectation. When you let go of expectations, you don't lose anything real. You only lose the illusions that were keeping you from experiencing the love that's actually there. You don't settle for less, you open yourself to more. More presence, more acceptance, more authentic connection than you ever thought possible. As Rumi wrote, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Your expectations are those barriers. They're the walls between you and the love that's trying to reach you. When you tear down those walls, love can finally flow freely. The choice is yours. You can continue living in the gap between expectation and reality, or you can close that gap by releasing the expectations. You can keep being disappointed by your partner's humanity, or you can start being amazed by their unique way of loving. Your relationship is waiting for you to love it as it is, not as you think it should be. Your partner is waiting for you to see them as they are, not as you expect them to be. And your heart is waiting for the peace that comes from accepting reality instead of fighting against it. The love you're seeking isn't on the other side of met expectations. It's right here, right now, in the imperfect, beautiful, real relationship you already have. You just need to stop expecting it to be different long enough to see it as it is. And what it is, when you really see it, is enough, more than enough. It's everything you need, just not in the package you expected. Let go of the package, receive the gift. Your relationship is waiting for you to finally say yes to what's actually there. The sun doesn't expect the earth to orbit differently. It simply shines, offering its light freely without conditions. without demands. When you love like the sun, unconditionally, without expectations, you illuminate everything around you. Your relationship becomes a place of warmth and growth rather than judgment and disappointment. Let go of the expectations, embrace what is, love who's actually there. Your relationship and your heart will thank you for it. Stop keeping score, start keeping love. The game you've been playing has no winners, only two people who slowly drift apart. But the love you can create when you stop playing that game, that's infinite. That's real. That's what you've been searching for all along. Your secret scorecard is destroying your relationship, but your conscious choice to love without conditions can save it. The choice is yours. Choose love. Choose acceptance. Choose to finally see the miracle that's been there all along, waiting for you to stop expecting it to be different. The person you love is not your expectation. There's so much more than that. They're real. They're here. They're loving you the best way they know how. And when you can finally see that, when you can finally receive that, you'll discover what it means to truly love and be loved in return. Let go, love what is. Your relationship is waiting for you to finally come home to what's real.